Chapter 23 The Trial of Paxsura, Part 2. Thomas. Thoughts. That went better than expected. I thought for sure the prosecutor and the captain of the Royal Guard would have for sure destroyed Paxsura's case. But it goes to show how evidence can turn things around. But about Paxsura's conversion, I'm not sure if there's really a defense for that, unless it's by the Queen's decree. It seems Ariana herself has made that no longer an offense. Just what is the Queen up to, anyway? She converted like Paxsura, yet she doesn't follow Zulshuran customs. Whatever. It's an interesting question I'll have to figure out later about what's really going on with the royal family beyond Paxsura. Because from my investigation through the process of discovery, it has led me to some deeply troubling things outside the public's eye. What was all that stuff about Jeremiah being raised in the same household as Her Majesty, yet not being publicly recognized? Why does there seem to be a feud between the Commander-in-Chief and the noble houses? There are just so many questions left unanswered. But I'm afraid if we don't know the truth until it's after all over. In the meantime, I'll defend Paxsura's case to the best of my ability. May 12th, 2101. 08:55 hours, Royal Court of Lansaro. It was early in the morning on the second day of Paxsura's trial to hear further witness testimony, except this time it was from character witnesses. And the first to the stand was Julius Whitetail, and when Mr. Whitetail was called to the stand, Thomas thought, well, today looks like the entirety of Fur Affinity has come to testify. Prosecutor Ellington then said, "Please state your name and occupation." Julius Whitetail then took a drink from a cold one and answered, "The name's Julius Whitetail, the owner and founder of Bootleg Brewery. I also do safe for work furry art, commissions on deviant art, and Fur Affinity." Thomas then tried to restrain himself from laughing while thinking, I freaking knew it. Ellington then asked, "What was your relationship to the defendant, and what kind of person was she?" Mr. Whitetail then answered, "You really want to know?" "Yes, and so would the jury." "Fine then. To describe her, she's no different than the kind of person the Dawn of the Ringtail Crime Syndicate was. Regularly bribed the district attorney in my own town and put on a fake persona for better public perception. But I knew better being a victim of organized crime before Paxsura. Paxsura was also the type of person you would use the faith of others for her own personal gain, such as the time she tried to force the priest of my own town to marry her to her Zulshuran husband, and then got a civil union because the priest refused such a sacrilege. If anything, Paxsura is nothing more than a fraud, who used her resource to make a false positive image of herself, just like Inari of the Kitsune clan, or the boss of organized crime, which she was in my own community. So, I wouldn't put it past her to do the same thing as this queen of this queendom." "And what kind of crimes did she commit in your own community that you know about?" Thomason interjected, "Objection! Alleged crimes or prosecution never done in another country are outside the jurisdiction of this court." Ellington then said, "I counter that by saying it gives insight to what kind of person she is." The judge then said, "Objection sustained." Ellington then further questioned Mr. Whitetail about Paxsura's character. "How did Paxsura treat you and the people of your community?" Mr. Whitetail then answered, "Where do I even start? She initially rubbed me off the wrong way when she first rolled up into my town. I thought at first she was just in a bad mood or having a bad day, but then she got this really bad attitude like she thinks she's above the law and better than everyone else. Reminded me a lot of the thugs I used to be a part of the Ringtail Mafia I used to run into. So, I thought for sure she's got to be part of the Celanese Mafia with the Silverstone gang. Never thought she'd actually be the queen. As for the other people in my community, one of the worst people they ever met. No one liked her, and everyone talked about her behind her back. But something that really says what kind of person she is was the time she forced her husband to marry her just so she could get a daughter who I knew quite well without realizing she was a princess. She was just a normal girl to me and my daughter, and her mother was just evil, for lack of better words. Everyone in the town was either an unwilling pawn in her schemes or made an enemy like me, who got feds involved after I found out the way she treated my daughter. So, when someone in my town finally shot her in self-defense, it was far away from a murder as you could get. And she honestly had it coming with how she acted like at the dawn of organized crime. The only reason she never went after the church in my community is because if she did, the only thing probably waiting for her would be a mob justice and the damnation of her own soul. Ellington then faced the jury and said, "I'm sure it is all very clear, you intelligent and understanding members of this grand jury, that Paxsura is exactly the type of person who would carry out the crimes in which she is accused. See to it you judge justly accordingly." The judge then said, "The defense may now cross-examine the witness." But rather than have any evidence and knowing the testimony of the former sheriff and the townsfolk, he knew he had no exculpatory evidence to disprove Mr. Whitetail's testimony. And to him it seemed the only saving grace of Mr. Whitetail's lack of polish and apparent lack of wit. So rather than try to win by evidence, Thomas asked, "Mr. Whitetail, how did it make you feel when Paxsura treated your daughter slightly less than desirable without realizing she was the queen of our queendom?" Such wording left such a vivid memory of how Paxsura treated Jeremiah and Natalia in the past. Mr. Whitetail then showed visible signs of anger with his way his tail moved and ears twitched and said, "Like I want to gut her for how she had treated my daughter. She should have died when Jeremiah shot her in self-defense and should have saved us a lot of trouble right now. How dumb do you have to be to not see she's guilty?" Thomas then faced the judge. "The defense requests that Mr. Whitetail's testimony be disregarded. He has just openly admitted he has intent to convict her guilty and is not an unbiased witness." The judge then ordered the bailiff to take Julius away as he glared at Paxsura, remembering what she had done to him and his family. The judge then said, "The court has removed Julius Whitetail from further testimony and his testimony will be disregarded. The defense will call its first character witness." The defense then called forth Versifeth Lunsarrow to the stand as she stood there giving a subtle gesture of sympathy towards her former queen. Thomas then said, "State your name and occupation." Versifeth then answered, "I am Viceroy Versifeth of House Lunsarrow." "What is your relationship to Paxsura and her personal character?" "Where do I even begin? There's so much to talk about, and how great she has been to us, as you yourself could attest to. You see, Paxsura was the type of person that always did what was in the best interest of the queendom, and those who served under her. She has also been far more merciful than much of the nobility to a fault, blaming herself for what was clearly that Zolshuan's assassination attempt. I happen to know a few things about him that you probably don't. That will help you see things clearly. First off, he had a personal vendetta against her, which I found out after interrogating him for crimes he committed against me and showing up on my property with a weapon. He admitted to me he took up a bounty on Paxsura's head to supposedly avenge his sister and our people. If anything, he was a terrorist that had it coming, and Paxsura knew about it in advance, which is why she called this bluff when he pretended to leave. She knew he would do such a thing after he shot her the first time 11 years ago in another country when the sheriff bailed him out. If anything, that Zolshuan should be put on trial and executed in place of Paxsura. I am also no stranger to politics, being nobility, and the entire trial is pure political theater. You all may as well let the Paxsura go free, because she did nothing wrong in defending herself, while rogue elements within her own ranks work to subvert her rightful rule over this queendom." "And how do you know this about him and my client specifically?" "I have kept in touch with Paxsura for years, being a distant relative that is in close contact. I've spent many hours conversing with Her Majesty while she has kept in prison, making sure someone actually came to her defense, and did my own private investigation into what really going on. I did this because I knew the national government wouldn't do a thorough enough investigation. If they found something that would tarnish their image, like, I don't know, not doing even basic screening of guests at the Coronation Festival. Ellington then said, "Objection, opinion and speculation." The judge then said, "Objection sustained." Thomas then asked Versafeth, "Why do you keep bringing up the shooter as relevant to Paxsura's character?" Versafeth then answered, "I keep bringing it up because Paxsura has told me he's part of the reason she was paranoid that day. She kept having visions and nightmares about him that day, preventing her from fully mentally recovering like she normally does. I'd probably be traumatized and paranoid too about the person if they shot me 11 years ago and knew they would probably show up at my daughter's coronation festival to kill me. It caused her such mental problems that day that she wasn't able to think rationally like she normally does. So I can't blame her for defending her life preemptively from a career bounty hunter and gunslinger who admitted to having a personal vendetta against her to multiple people, including myself. I mean, he even showed up to the festival with a loaded revolver with an incomplete notch next to Paxsura's name on the grip, like he was out to kill someone like in those American Old West movies. That's certainly interesting. Do you have anything more to say in regard to Paxsura's character?" "I have nothing more to say that the public doesn't already know about her. The rest are personal matters that have no relevance to this trial." The judge then said, "The prosecution may now cross-examine the witness." Ellington then looked smug before answering, "I see you're quite a fan of the defendant, but your honesty is called into question. Do you have any political or personal gain in regards to your testimony?" Versafeth then answered, mildly annoyed, "Given Paxsura has lawfully passed down her authority to her daughter, I have nothing to gain or lose personally or politically by speaking truthfully to her good character." "Why do you keep bringing up the shooter when he's a alleged victim of Paxsura's attempted first-degree murder?" "It's because it's central to this whole case and Paxsura's motives for preemptive self-defense. If anything, it shows Paxsura as being framed for something she didn't actually do, and is totally outside of her character for all the time I've known her. I have an interest in the truth, and the obvious truth is that the idea Paxsura would attempt to commit first-degree murder is absurd." Ellington then asked a few more questions that didn't lead to any more facts that weren't already revealed from Versafeth's testimony. But before the second day of the trial could finish its closing arguments, Thomas said, "Your Honor, given the nature of Jeremiah McCreed Johnson as a material witness and central actor in almost all of the witness testimonies and evidence pointing to his potential culpability, the defense requests the court to compel him to testify." But rather than object, Ellington seemed rather relaxed, as if he expected it would come to this. He simply said, "I agree. It is vital to the truth of this case that he be compelled to testify. It's a shame he hasn't been forced to testify sooner." Thomas Wright then thought to himself, "I know you're planning something, Ellington. Just what is it?" Ellington then thought while looking at Thomas smugly, "You've just made the biggest mistake this whole trial, asking him to testify. You can't charge him for things he has already received an imperial pardon for. You are not a clown. You are the entire circus." Imposters. While preparing to infiltrate Versafeth's prison to free Jeremiah, Buck asked Natalia, "Do you think having digitigrade legs helps with fitting through vents?" Natalia then answered, "I don't know, I never tried except when I was a little pup." "Well, I was just thinking, if we use our Tanuki magic to turn ourselves invisible with illusions, we'll still need to unlock reinforced doors. It's not like we have the firepower to take on hordes of elves by ourselves. So I thought it would be much easier if we just went through the vents." Natalia's ears and tail then perked up with an idea. "Actually, I think we do. Edenthiel, I know you've got the most mountain magical energy out of all of us, so what can you do with it?" Edenthiel then looked a little sheepish. "Sorry, it's really more of a support magic, but I can use it to make you as strong as Agron or Sylvia, as well as dramatically increase the power of your magic. I also have a heart sense, which isn't exactly mind reading, but I can feel the intentions of others and feelings of their own hearts. But lastly, I hope I never have to do this. But I can heal you to full health, but will feel all the pain within myself. Buck then tried to boost Edenthiel's confidence and said, I've played enough classic RPGs to know it's really support mains that are the real healers and the real MVPs. But out of curiosity, can you increase my DPS and grant immunities? I'm not sure I know what you mean by that, but I think I can. Well, if you can boost my magical ability enough, I can also use my illusion magic to make you look and sound even more convincing. Just let me know when you're ready to transform into an elf. Edenthiel then took a deep breath before answering, I'm ready. And after Edenthiel agreed, Buck used his Tanuki magic to turn Edenthiel from a slightly pudgy and wholesome cinnamon roll into a very convincing elf lady, and with the accent and uniform to match. Buck then asked Natalia, What do you think? Does she look convincing enough? Natalia then answered unimpressed, Just like the world gods, and honestly couldn't tell the two apart. What do you think, Edenthiel? Then I looked at herself and her illusionary body. It honestly doesn't even feel like I'm in my own body anymore. If anything, I feel like an elf and I don't like it. Then it's convincing enough. You ready? Buck then answered, I am, before facing Edenthiel and saying, Well, now that you're one of the imposters, now's your chance to be a big sus. Natalia then interjected while cringing, And maybe turn her into an amogus while you're at it. That was pretty cringe. Buck then used a Tanuki magic to transform into an elf, looking smug like the elves from Lord of the Rings, and asked, Is it already wrong to enjoy old V games and dank memes? Natalia then also transformed into an elf. No, it's just a little childish, don't you think? As well, it's better than de-stresses and drugs or alcohol. I mean, I could drink a bunch of dragon milk, but the only kind I can get my paws on turn me into a Kyle on 12 monster energy drinks. You have a point. Now let's get going and treat Jeremiah before the elves do anything more to him. Easiest prison break of all time. As Versifeth was pacing outside of Jeremiah's cell like a dragon, she monologued. I had quite the field day, my treasure. It seems after everyone's testimony, it has become painfully obvious you're the one to blame for everything that has happened. I wonder how much it must feel to know you finally faced justice. After all, with how much Umbriel helped you flee. And now he can't save you now, can he? Neither can your false Sivir save you either. But Jeremiah remained silent. Versifeth then asked, Why don't you speak to me? Your wife has the gift of gab, yet you act like an angler has filleted your tongue. So, speak, won't you? Jeremiah then answered, I know you're only doing this for your own enjoyment. I wonder if you realize how much your own arrogance has blinded you to how much your servants hate you. So what if they hate me? They can't kill me because they depend on me and would starve to death otherwise. I doubt it. They could just serve under my sister or work elsewhere. Your sister? Don't make me laugh. You're not even Selenese, but part of those Zolshurans who hate who is above them by their divine right. Then tell me, does your divine right protect you against Tanukis? Because there's still a Tanuki out there that cares about me. Versifeth then laughed without realizing the cell only appeared locked and closed because of illusion magic. And how would a lazy and fat raccoon threaten my rule? Because you were just defeated by one. Buck then lowered his disguise, partially revealing he wasn't truly Jeremiah, and shot Paxsura paralyzed with his blaster pistol. And don't call me a raccoon! Buck then transformed back into an elf as his illusions and radioed Natalia. Zivazga, status report. Natalia then answered, "The package has been taken safe distance." "Understood." Buck then said to Versifeth, "It was nice knowing you, but I have more important things to do on the Queen's behalf," before shooting her unconscious with his blaster pistol. By the time Versifeth woke up, Jeremiah and Buck were gone, without anyone tripping the alarm or defenses. Then she found herself locked up in Jeremiah's cell. Versifeth then demanded the elven guards release her immediately, but the guard only answered, "For violating your oath to preserve the House of Lanzaro from scandal and your terrible treatment of us, we are no longer required to follow your orders." Meanwhile, Buck met up with Jeremiah and Natalia on the way back to Lanzaro Palace, and Jeremiah asked, "Natalia, out of all the people I thought would come from me, I didn't know my sister would send you." Natalia then looked a little sheepish, saying, "Well, it was more because of your wife, and I thought I'd need to do it myself because the Salinese government has its panties in a wad." Jeremiah then laughed, "And I thought you would drag me behind if you helped me save my wife. But look at me now, saved by an old friend I didn't think could do it." Natalia then turned around, flinging her paw hands in the air, along with her fluffy tail. "Well, I'm used to it. Us Tanukis aren't thought to be too bright anyway." Edenthiel then embraced and kissed Jeremiah, just happy to see her husband again, as Buck looked away. And when they kissed a little longer than expected, Buck said, "You two can finish your kissing session back at Lanzaro Palace. We're not out of the woods yet." Jeremiah then stopped embracing and kissing his wife for a moment and said, "Right, let's get back to my sister's place where we can sort this all out. Thanks again for coming to save me when no one else would." Natalia then said softly, "As it always will be." Edenthiel then looked at Natalia suspiciously until her heart sense knew that what Natalia meant. Genuine care for the people closest to her. A little more than friends. And after Jeremiah and Edenthiel had returned to safety to Lanzaro Palace, Buck joined Natalia on the balcony overlooking the city lights as the insects played their instruments. But rather than Natalia being dressed in her bodysuit from earlier, she was dressed like she was out on a date. Then she looked at Buck with the gentle eyes and said, "Thanks for coming, Buck." Buck then also noticed what his mission partner was wearing and asked, "What's the occasion?" "I just wanted to thank you for helping me today. It means a lot to me." "You're welcome. It's just part of being partners, right?" "It is, but there's something I must confess. You know by now that I care about Jeremiah and Edenthiel about as much as you care about Sonny and Bonnie. But now there's a third person." "You have a boyfriend or something? I'm not mad if you do. I totally understand." Buck then chuckled. "After all, you said your mission was purely professional and when we started this whole thing, right?" Natalia then guiltily tilted her head. "Yeah, about that." Natalia then remained awkwardly silent as her shoulders, ears, and tail lowered. Natalia then said, "We've been through a lot together for the past few months, and sometimes I'm worried that me being loyal to a fault has put you in more danger than necessary. You must think I'm pathetic or rash for thinking that way, don't you?" Buck stood back with surprise. "No, not at all." "Why do you speak to me like this? After all, I'm supposed to be following orders and doing what I'm told without fail because I have too much loyalty to the people I care about. I couldn't force myself to indoctrinate Titania and make her a political pawn, which is why I ended up raising her. The only reason I'm here like this is because I'm a failure and I couldn't do what I was supposed to." "You're not a failure, Natalia. Don't talk to yourself like that." "Why shouldn't I?" "Because it means you have a heart. That's nothing to be ashamed of." Natalia then let out a heavy sigh. "I know you're just trying to solve my problems, but I just need to vent. It's a girl's thing." "I understand. Take the time you need." Natalia then just looked over the balcony, resting her chin on her paw hands. Buck then does the same thing next to Natalia, and also remains silent. Buck then, after a while of silence, said calmly, You know, you're the reason I try to be a better person. The way you care about your friends and those closest to you. It really means something I like about you. And that's a good thing. Natalia then asked, "You mean that?" Buck then glanced gently towards Natalia. "I do." Both then remained silent, but Buck could feel Natalia's fluffy tail subconsciously wrapped around his, nudging him a little closer before she asked, "Do you think anyone will notice?" Buck then started to feel his heart rate rise, feeling Natalia's tail around his. "Notice what?" "This." Natalia then wrapped her tail around Buck while embracing him and slowly kissed him on the cheek. Natalia then said, "I think we both know that we have feelings for each other. And I think it's time we admit we're a little more than friends." Did you know this? Jeremiah X Natalia ship. After thinking about something that has come to mind since writing the final chapter of Book 1 is that Natalia honestly seems like emotionally and relationally in every way except physical a better fit for Jeremiah than Edenthiel. She seems like a better fit to be Jeremiah's wife because the only thing really holding her back is that she's a Tanuki. But what do you think? Does Natalia actually seem like a better partner for Jeremiah or Edenthiel? Now's your chance to be a big sus. This was a reference to a meme with Spampton from Deltarune crossover with Amogus meme, with a remix of Now's Your Chance to Be a from Deltarune in an Amogus sound font. Edgeworth meme. You are not a clown, you are the entire circus, is a meme featuring prosecutor Miles Edgeworth on the visual novel Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, which is what Thomas Wright's character is somewhat based on, as well as the trial scenes and antics in this chapter. It makes me wonder if I should have made this an objection.lol.